and welcome to Indus News. Live from Islamabad, I'm Naila Shuja and these are the headlines. Israel's top court has deferred Monday's hearing on plans to evict Palestinians from the Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood in East Jerusalem to make room for Jewish settlers. This comes a day after Israeli forces cracked down on Palestinians protesting forced evictions at the Al-Aqsa Mosque and elsewhere. Nearly 300 Palestinians were wounded in the assault during the last 2 consecutive nights. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has condemned the attack on Palestinians and urged the international community to protect their rights. The Taliban have accused the United States of repeatedly violating the Doha peace agreement. In his Eid message, Taliban leader Haibatullah Akhundzada mentioned the delay in prisoners' release and a missed deadline to withdraw troops, among other violations. He said the U.S. will be responsible for consequences if it fails to live up to its commitments. India has registered over 4,000 COVID-19 deaths in the past 24 hours and more than 400,000 cases for the 4th consecutive day. Meanwhile, South Africa has detected the first 4 cases of the coronavirus variant that emerged in India. In Pakistan, 118 people lost their lives to the virus and nearly 3,800 tested positive in the past 24 hours. Globally, the virus has claimed more than 3.2 million lives and infected over 157 million. Chad's military has claimed victory in its weeks-long battle with northern rebels that led to the death of President Idris Deby last month. A military council headed by the Deby's son is now overseeing an 18-month transition to the elections. Opposition politicians have denounced the takeover as a coup. And in cricket, Pakistan are a wicket away to wrap up a 2-0 victory in the Test series as they restrict Zimbabwe to 220 at the end of the 3rd day in Harare. For more news and details, stay tuned. We'll be right back after a short break. Welcome back. Israel's top court has deferred Monday's hearing on plans to evict Palestinians from the Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood in East Jerusalem to make room for Jewish settlers. This comes a day after Israeli forces cracked down on Palestinians protesting forced evictions at Al-Aqsa Mosque and elsewhere. Tensions have mounted in the city amid growing anger over the eviction of Palestinians from their homes in Jerusalem. Nearly 300 Palestinians were wounded in the assault during the last 2 consecutive nights. The international community, including the United States and Russia, have urged Israel to exercise restraint. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has condemned the attack on Palestinians and urged the international community to protect their rights. Afghan President Ashraf Ghani has declared Tuesday a national day for the mourning of the victims of the Kabul and Logar bombings. In a recorded message, Ghani termed the attack on the innocent people a crime against humanity. This comes as the death toll from Saturday's blast outside a school in Kabul rose to 68. Medics say at least 165 people were injured in the attack. Pakistan and the UN have both strongly condemned the killing of civilians. Meanwhile, the Afghan foreign minister and prosecutors from the ICC held a meeting in The Hague to discuss a war crimes probe in the country. The Taliban have accused the United States of repeatedly violating the Doha peace agreement. In his Eid message, Taliban leader Haibatullah Akhundzada mentioned the delay in prisoners' release and a missed deadline to withdraw troops, among other violations. He said the U.S. will be responsible for consequences if it fails to live up to its commitments. But he welcomed the announcement by the U.S. and NATO to withdraw troops by the 11th of September. He went on to say that the group is ready to protect the independence and sovereignty of Afghanistan at any cost. India has registered over 4,000 COVID-19 deaths in the past 24 hours and more than 400,000 cases for the fourth consecutive day. Globally, the virus has claimed more than 3.2 million lives and infected over 157 million people. More in this report.
The coronavirus pandemic situation remains most perilous in the South Asian region. As the crisis continues to worsen, India has received more ventilators and vials of drug remdesivir from Canada, Austria and the Czech Republic. Meanwhile, South Africa has detected the first 4 cases of the coronavirus variant that emerged in India. The latest research shows that UK variant and the Maharashtra double mutant strains are behind the exponential surges in the tech hub of Bengaluru. Amid spiking deaths, a number of southern states of India has imposed stricter lockdowns.
He was my relative and his name was Vijay Kumar Jaipal. He was coronavirus positive for the last 10 days and was admitted to a private hospital. Last evening he got a bed in civil hospital here. He was 35 years old and has 2 young children and he passed away this morning. His children are very young and his wife is hardly 32 years old. May no one face such a tragedy ever.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi called on the EU to support the proposal by India and South Africa to waive patents on COVID-19 vaccines. Pope Francis has also backed the US proposal to waive intellectual property rights for vaccines. But CEO of the drug maker Pfizer says the proposed waiver would disrupt progress made so far in boosting vaccine supplies. German Chancellor Angela Merkel also opposed waiving patents, saying it could jeopardize the quality of shots.
I made it clear that I do not believe that giving away patents is the solution to make vaccine available to more people. I believe that we need the creativity and innovation of those firms, and that is why I believe in a patent protection.
In the US, declining demand for vaccines is causing states to refuse their full allocations of doses from the federal government. Meanwhile, in Australia, New South Wales extended social distancing and mask-wearing rules by a week as authorities hunted for the source of a small outbreak.
In Pakistan, 118 more people have died from COVID-19 overnight. The Health Ministry says the death count has reached 18,915. The ministry said more than 3,700 people tested positive for the virus in the past 24 hours. It said the caseload has crossed 858,000, out of which over 757,000 have recovered. The number of active cases in the country is approaching 82,000. Earlier, Pakistan received more than 1 million doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine under the COVAX program. In Chad, the military has claimed victory against northern rebels that led to the death of President Idris Deby on the battlefield last month. Crowds in the capital N'Djamena cheered as soldiers returned from the front line in a column of armored vehicles. Dozens of captured rebels and seized weapons were put on display in the city for the press. The army chief said the forces have cleaned up all the areas and added that the whole territory is secured. On Saturday, security forces fired tear gas to disperse a protest against the ruling military council. Led by Mohammad Idris, the council seized power after Deby's death, promising to oversee an 18-month transition to election. President Vladimir Putin says Russia will uphold international law, but at the same time, it will firmly defend the national interests. Putin said this after reviewing the country's traditional World War II victory parade in Moscow. The parade featured over 12,000 troops, intercontinental ballistic missile launchers, and a flypast by nearly 80 military aircrafts. Following the parade, Putin and his Tajik counterpart paid tribute to the victims of war at a memorial by the Kremlin. This year's parade precedes parliamentary polls in September and comes at a time when Russia's ties with the West are strained over a host of issues. Iran's President Hassan Rouhani says a deal has been reached with the world powers to lift main sanctions on Tehran. Iranian state media quoted Rouhani as saying that the United States and the Europeans have agreed to return to the 2015 nuclear deal during the Vienna talks. President Rouhani added that the only details remain have to be agreed upon. However, there is no immediate confirmation from the U.S. or the other parties to the accord. Earlier in a tweet, Iranian Foreign Minister Javad Zarif said the United States has an obligation to help revive the nuclear pact. Zarif noted that the crisis was started by Washington with its withdrawal from the nuclear deal 3 years ago. Arab coalition in Yemen says it has destroyed an explosive laden drone launched by the Houthis towards Saudi Arabia. In a statement, a coalition spokesperson said the drone was aimed at Hamas Mashhad city, but the Houthis claim they successfully hit King Khalid Air Base in the Saudi city. Rebels have escalated regular cross-border attacks on Saudi Arabia and a ground offensive in Yemen's Marib region. In Myanmar, the anti-coup protesters have continued their protests in the country. In the Mandalay city, members of student unions from universities took to the streets to protest against the junta. Myanmar military rulers have also branded the rival National Unity Government as a terrorist group, blaming it for bombings and killings. Bombings are reported daily and local militias have been formed to confront the army. Earlier this week, the National Unity Government announced that it will set up a People's Defense Force. The junta said the Unity Government and the new force would now be covered by the anti-terrorism law. According to an activist group, security forces have killed at least 776 civilians so far and detained nearly 4,000. It's now time for a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has thanked Saudi Arabia and the UAE for helping the country financially during tough times. He was addressing the Pakistani community in Jeddah after performing Umrah. The Prime Minister assured the Pakistani diaspora in Saudi Arabia all-out support of his government. Earlier, the Prime Minister met the OIC Secretary General Yusuf bin Ahmed Al Uthmani. On Saturday, he held a one-to-one meeting with Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman in Jeddah. During his visit, the two countries also signed a number of agreements to boost relations in diverse fields. At least 15 people have died after a landslide at an artisanal gold mine in Guinea's northeast Siguri region. Initial reports suggest a rock overhang collapsed near the village of Takaturu. A Red Cross official says 2 people have been rescued by the volunteers, while others are still trapped under the debris. The latest incident adds to a series of accidents at artisanal mines in recent years, particularly near the border with Mali. Belarus's President Alexander Lukashenko has signed a decree on the transfer of presidential powers. Under the decree, the president's powers could be transferred to the country's Security Council if he is killed or unable to perform his duties. It allows the Security Council to impose a state of emergency or a martial law in the country. The Presidential Press Service said the decree was introduced to preserve the country's independence and sovereignty. Earlier, the powers of the president were directly transferred to the Prime Minister of Belarus. The U.S. Navy claims it has seized an illicit shipment of weapons in the international waters of the North Arabian Sea. In a statement, the Bahrain-based Fifth Fleet said the shipment contains Russian and Chinese-made weapons. It said the cache included anti-tank guided missiles, assault rifles, PKM machine guns, and rocket-propelled grenade launchers. The fleet said modern telescopic sights were also found on board. The statement said the original source and intended destination of the material is under investigation. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has invited the leaders of the UK's devolved nations for crisis talks upon the Union. Johnson's call comes after Scotland's pro-independence party won its 4th consecutive parliamentary election. Leaders of the SNP, Nicola Sturgeon, said the election results proved that a second independence vote for Scotland was the will of the country. She added that it will be absurd if London tries to ignore the democratic wishes of the people. But in a letter to the leaders of the devolved governments, Johnson said the UK was best served when everyone works together. Earlier, he termed another referendum on Scotland irresponsible as Britain emerges from the pandemic. Final results of Scotland's local elections showed that the SNP won 64 of the 129 seats in the Edinburgh-based parliament. In the UK, Labour's party Sadiq Khan has been re-elected as the Mayor of London. Khan saw off his main challenger Sean Bailey, who was the candidate from Prime Minister Boris Johnson's Conservative Party. He won by 55.2% to Bailey's 44.8%. Speaking at the City Hall, Khan promised to strain every sinew to help build a better, brighter future for London. He said the results of the elections around the UK show the country remains deeply divided and the scars of Brexit have yet to heal. Khan had focused his campaign on creating jobs and boosting London's tourism economy. In Italy, 5 boats carrying hundreds of migrants have landed in the Lampedusa after being intercepted by authorities off the coast of the Mediterranean island. Local media reports say one of the boats carrying 325 people was intercepted 8 miles off of Lampedusa, while some 400 migrants of various nationalities disembarked from another vessel. Lampedusa is one of the main landing ports on the route for migrants departing from North Africa to reach Europe. China says debris from its rocket that was hurtling back towards Earth has disintegrated over the Indian Ocean. It has finally ended days of speculation over where the debris would hit. China's state-run media said parts of the Long March 5B debris landed at a point west of the Maldives, but China's space agency said most of the atmosphere was burnt up. The main segment from the vehicle was used to launch the first mode of China's new space station last month. The world is celebrating Mother's Day today, a special day which honors motherhood and maternal bonds in our life. The day is celebrated on the second Sunday of May every year since the early 20th century.
The modern holiday began in the United States at the initiative of Anna Jarvis. She wished to honor her late mother, Anne Rees Jarvis, who was a peace activist. Anna had a memorial for her mother at St. Andrew's Methodist Church in West Virginia, which is now the International Mother's Day Shrine. Jarvis believed that a mother is the person who has done more for you than anyone in the world. On the occasion, the United Nations paid salutations to moms around the world for braving the COVID-19 pandemic despite all challenges. Here in Pakistan, President Arif Alvi has promulgated an ordinance for the protection of parents. Under the ordinance, forcibly evicting parents will be a punishable offense. Meanwhile, Chinese President Xi Jinping remembered his mother's inedible words that family is people's first classroom and parents are children's first teachers. Xi Jinping is a member of the Communist Party of China as well as an exemplar model of the Chinese president. However, the day is marked differently in different countries around the world. In the UK, it is celebrated on the 4th Sunday of March to honor the Mother Church on Christian Mothering Sunday. As for the Greeks, they celebrate the festival on February.
From jumping off choppers to parkour, the male-dominated world of stunts is attracting an increasingly large number of women in France. In a school of northern France, nearly a third of the student body is now made up of women. More in this report.
Women who once worked as makeup artists or dancers are now aspiring to join the challenging world of stunts. 29-year-old Valeriana Michelani says she wants to show that women can perform wall flips just as well as men.
I am a dancer and a show performer, so I'm used to thriving in a graceful and feminine world. And now I'm in quite the opposite. I'm quite masculine and like brawls.
Professional training in the school takes 2 years. With 10 training periods, that encompass acrobatics, parkour, and combats. In total, students need 800 hours of training to graduate.
Each time we take in 14 newcomers in each training period. There are around 7 women each time. It's the spirit of diversity almost each time, and all the better. It's good for the campus spirit. It's good for diversity. It's good for the job market. And it adds a touch of girly tenderness.
In the past, finding stunt women for films and shows were a hard task. But with the film industry's growing appetite for female superheroes, demand for women's stunt performance has increased. Several students of the French school have entered working in action films as well as live shows.
Welcome back. In cricket, Pakistan are only a wicket away from wrapping up a 2-0 victory in the Test series. Naman Ali's fiver restricts Zimbabwe to 220 runs at the end of an entertaining third day. He was supported by Shaheen Shah Afridi, who ripped through the Zimbabwean trail and bagged 4 wickets. In National Basketball Association, Washington Wizards have overcome a 12-point deficit to edge Indiana Pacers 133-132 in Indianapolis.
Russell Westbrook recorded his 181st career triple-double, tying Oscar Robertson's all-time NBA record. Westbrook finished with 33 points, 19 rebounds and 15 assists. Bradley Beal also added 50 points for the Wizards, who have now climbed to 9th place in the Eastern Conference. Meanwhile, Golden State Warriors beat Oklahoma City Thunder 136-97 in San Francisco. Stephen Curry scored 49 points for Warriors, who handed 6th straight defeat to Oklahoma. In other fixtures, Utah Jazz defeated the visiting Houston Rockets 124-116, while Brooklyn Nets downed the Denver Nuggets 125-119.
In boxing, Saul Canelo Alvarez stopped Britain's Billy Joe Saunders in their super middleweight bout via a technical knockout. The Mexican star unified the WBC, WBA, and WBO super middleweight titles. Alvarez stopped Saunders in the round 8 with a right uppercut that swelled and appeared to damage the right eye of the Briton. The fight was stopped by the referee before the start of the round 9 after Saunders failed to rise from his stool. He was then taken to the hospital with a suspected fracture in his right eye socket. With over 73,000 fans at the AT&T Stadium in Texas, it was the biggest crowd ever at an indoor boxing venue in the United States. It's now time to take a look at the weather updates from around the world. For the latest news updates, you can follow us on our social media at indus.news.